Assalamu alaikum warahmatullah. Uh, so today, inshallah, we will be continuing off from where we left off last time. Uh, Let me just get the chat box open. Okay, so last time we were discussing verses from Surah Yasin. We were talking about who produces for you fire from the green tree. And we were talking about how these people, or we are questions, we had like these questions about, how can God recreate the bones that from dust, and then the verses go, it's the same one as the one that produces you fire from the green tree. We were discussing those verses, and this week, inshallah, we'll continue from the fourth glow. So here, fourth glow, I'll bring a reading, and then we can start discussing after. The Quran's conciseness is so comprehensive and wonderful that when studied carefully, it becomes apparent that sometimes, through some simple detail or particular event, it compassionately shows to simple, ordinary minds most extensive, lengthy universal rules and general laws, like showing an ocean in an ewer, a large jug with a wide mouth, formerly used for carrying water. Okay. Like showing an ocean in an ewer, we should point out only two examples of this out of thousands. So basically, it's so comprehensive that even if it fits into like a small jug of water, it seems to fit like a small jug of water. In fact, there's an ocean of water to be explored there. That's how comprehensive it is when studied carefully. He emphasized studying carefully. And we will now be seeing examples of this. And maybe it's also worth emphasizing even more here. He says, it through some simple detail or particular event, this could be an event in a story, maybe an event in a prophet's life, as he will go into, an event that it's explaining. It compassionately, so there's this compassionately shows to simple ordinary minds most extensive, lengthy universal rules. So I'm guessing he uses the word compassionately here because we have simple, ordinary minds, right? And we want examples that are easy to understand, that we can relate to. We can relate to examples of other human beings, examples of stories, examples of our emotions sometimes. But the things we can relate to are how other human beings act or their stories. So it would be compassionate to give me these stories that would be easier for me to understand. I think that's the word that's why he's using the words compassionate. Anyways, the first example. This is the 3 verses expounded in detail in the first station of the 20th word, which describes under the name of the teaching of the names to the person of Adam, the teaching of all the sciences and branches of knowledge with which the sons of Adam have been inspired, through the angels prostrating before Adam and Satan not prostrating. They state that most beings from fish to angels are subjugated to humankind, just as harmful creatures from snakes to Satan do not obey man and are hostile to him. And through the people of Moses, peace be upon him, slaughtering a cow, they state that the concept of cow worship, which was taken from the worship of cows in Egypt and showed its effect in the event of the calf, was slaughtered by Moses' knife. And through water gushing forth from the rock and springs flowing out and spreading, they also state that the rock layer, which is under the soil layer, acts as a source of both water, springs, and the soil. I'll also read the second example. This is the whole and the parts of the story of Moses, peace be upon him, which is frequently repeated in the Quran, and each of the repetitions of which is shown as a tip of a universal rule, with each repetition stating the rule in question. For example, O Haman, build me a lofty palace. There's a footnote here about the verse. Pharaoh is commanding his minister, build me a high tower so that I can take a look at the heavens and observe them. I wonder if there is a God who governs in the skies like Moses claims, who can be seen from their disposition. Thus, through the word palace and this minor incident, it states a strange rule dominant in the traditions of the Egyptian pharaohs, who, because they lived in the desert with no mountains, wanted mountains, and because they did not recognize the Creator, were worshippers of nature and claimed godhead. And worshipping fame through displaying the works of their dominion, perpetuated their name and constructed the famous mountain-like pyramids, and agreed to magic and metempsychosis, and had their corpses mummified and preserved in their mountain-like tombs. Okay, I'll stop there. Inshallah, we can get to the end of that. It's as the email kind of foreshadowed, it is talking about Pharaoh and Haman. And also here it's talking about mummification and other things, which is interesting, at least to read. So inshallah, we can get there. But I think let's start from the beginning then. So what we're again covering, to repeat, is the Quran's conciseness is so comprehensive and wonderful that when studied carefully, it becomes apparent that through simple events or particular events, there can be oceans. It's as if there's an ocean of things to read in there. In some sense, I think we have been talking about this because we've been talking about the Quran's comprehensive before in previous weeks. I'm not sure what he's exactly, what's the difference in this topic. Maybe the difference is now he's speaking about particular events or maybe human events, like according to like, right now he's talking about specific events and stories. Previously he would focus on maybe verses that didn't relate to a story. I'm not sure if that is the difference here. But regardless, it's about the comprehensiveness that we can find within the Quran and particular events. So the first example, he goes into the teaching of the names to the person of Adam and the teaching of all the sciences and branches of knowledge with which the sons of Adam have been inspired. And he's now reading how in the story of Adam, the angels prostrated and Satan didn't prostrate. And he says, through the angels prostrating before Adam and Satan not prostrating, they state that most beings from fish to angels are subjugated to humankind, just as harmful creatures from snakes to Satan do not obey men and are hostile to him. This right here. So this, it's an interesting reading because the comparison he's making is when the angels prostrated, he's saying that most beings from fish to angels, I guess fish to angels means all creation or all creatures. I'm not sure what fish means. Like I'm guessing it just means all animals or all beings are subjugated to humankind. But then he says, just as harmful creatures from snakes to Satan do not obey man and are hostile to him. So I'm not sure how he's reading this now, because a snake is definitely an animal. It's definitely a creation, right? And I'm sure there's many more. I'm sure there's fish or other animals that I would consider to be subjugated to humankind in some sense, or to be like angels, but that can still be very harmful for us. I mean, for example, a moose can be extremely harmful, or a bear. I'm not really sure how Nursi is reading this. I would appreciate comments if you have any ideas about why he's making this comparison, and he's contrasting fish and snakes. But I guess, you know, like if you can imagine that Satan was turned into a snake, or he was deceitful, maybe like a snake, in some sense, then maybe that's how he's reading it. If there's no comments, I'll just, okay, Brother Yusuf, go ahead.
In here, author is also giving an example of how to read Quran. So in those stories, there are specifics that are at play. Like there's this human called Adam, and then there's this Satan who is sort of competing or fighting with Adam. But Nursi in here is saying that actually the way Quran speaks, it is giving a specific example so that we can understand and generalize or understand the more general concept. Explaining this general concept through examples that I can relate to makes it easy for me to understand, because now I am feeling what he means. Then I can extrapolate that understanding. And in his example, in like names being taught to Adam, and Satan being, or Satan challenging, in this case, is to make, the author is in here is saying that actually it's telling your story. It is telling that in this existence, there are things which are, most of the things are created for you to get to learn, like by interacting with them, I get to learn my creator. But then there are other things which are apparently going to be hostile to me or coming against me. But again, thinking this in terms of the big picture, we can also think further to say that then what is the point of those hostile things in my journey of learning? And actually, like over the weekend when we were having the retreat, the topic was COVID. So COVID seems to be a hostile being in this existence, which is trying to attack me like a snake. But over the course of presentations, we observed, or we concluded that actually those are, again, educational tools for me to get to know my creator better, to appreciate his mercy. So all these are being exemplified in Quran by this apparent fight or contradiction between Adam and Satan. And I think this is how the author is saying that, yes, we can read it as a real story, but also that specific story is told in Quran not to give us some just storytelling, but the purpose in here is to simplify a very big picture of human existence, human experience on Earth, but on two specific examples. This is what I understand.
Yeah, thank you. Actually, that was very helpful. So it's not to say that one is your friend and the other one's your enemy. It's more that one is going to be externally kind to you, and your training will be in that, and the other one will be, let's say, mean to you, or it'll be it'll look harmful to you, but that is also training for you. They're both training for you, and these are the two types of training that you will be experiencing. Not that one is good and the other one's evil. Yeah, thank you. And we can continue on unless someone else has a comment to make. And then the next sentence goes, and through the people of Moses, peace be upon him. Did someone want to make a comment? Okay.
Assalamu alaikum, everybody. Saira here. Very quickly, Brother Abdul Rahman, a very nice presentation. I'm sorry I joined in a bit later, but I'm hearing and listening, and I have Risale-i open in front of me in my laptop also. from the link. I do take the classes with or weekly lessons with Dr. Yamina Bobinaya, alhamdulillah, from Receiving Noor. And I have learned from her when we go through the windows or the words and have gone through in the past few weeks and months that this particular window, I know we had covered it, or the word rather, the understanding is to recognize that these are all ayats, these are all signs in our life. Allah Ta'ala, like you said, has put all of them for different reason as a lesson for us to learn, or some quality for us to develop that we perhaps didn't have. So if you look at the kalam between Allah Ta'ala, Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala and Moses, he says that if you make your asa fall down and hit the ground with it, it'll turn into snake, but don't be afraid. Remember? So when Allah Ta'ala says that, then he is assuring that the reason why Allah Ta'ala has put Moses, Hazrat Musa alayhi salam, through the experience is to strengthen him, to make him realize, because he was preparing him for the meeting with the magicians. And that's how I read it. Maybe somebody else can illuminate it better. Jazakallah khair.
Yeah, thank you for your comment. Yeah, we have one comment in the chat saying you need enemies to grow stronger. Let's say you need teachers to grow stronger. Yeah. And then, yeah, thank you for your comments. So next sentence. And through the people of Moses, peace be upon him, slaughtering a cow, they state that the concept of cow worship, which was taken from the worship of cows in Egypt and showed its effect in the event of the calf, was slaughtered by Moses' knife. So in this example, Nursi is saying that in the story of Moses alayhi salam, when the cow is, let's say, slaughtered or broken down, or when the cow is slaughtered, I think he's talking about the yellow cow maybe at this point. When that cow is slaughtered, this is now alluding to how when Moses came, this concept of worshiping cows was also slaughtered. Like cow worship was also broken down, or was halted. I don't know history enough to have a comment about this, but again, you are able to make many understand a verse in many ways. You can understand it historically in many ways, because this Quran is speaking to all of us and in all times. So the cow worship of back then was maybe worshiping an actual cow, and the story of Moses, destroyed that cow worship. But in our time, there are other cows that we might be worshiping, and we could also somehow understand that this verse is also speaking about that. Brother Vikan, please go ahead.
Jazakallah khairan. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. So when you said that I don't know the history well enough to make a comment, so I guess that's the whole point here. At least to me, the author is saying that you don't have to be worried about this historical event, this particular event. Like in the previous paragraph, it says through some simple detail or particular event. Okay, it's a simple particular event. It compassionately shows to simple ordinary minds most extensive, lengthy, universal rules and general laws. And the second part is what we should be interested in, these universal laws, these lengthy extensive, the rules. And with this example, for instance, the slaughtering a cow or worshipping a cow, I think what we should be getting from this verse is the idea of worshipping a cow or idea of worshipping an idol, a false god. Because none of us, I assume, in practical terms, none of us is worshipping a cow for cow. To the extent I know the people, there are only 1-2 names that I don't know personally, but I assume none is worshipping a cow. Neither I, ever met with someone who worshipped a cow. Like I hear stories about some Indian cultures worshipping cows or whatever, but I never met. Like this is not a particular event or particular fact in my life. And that's not the point. The point is, like everyone else, I also have some cows in my life that I worship, some idols, some false gods that I worship. And this ayah also suggesting me a recipe that you should slaughter them with Moses' knife, meaning you should follow the Moses path. You should follow his teachings, whatever he represents in Quran. You should use his knife or his staff, and you should crack open the truth, the life out of rocks. This is what you should do. And this is the concept, this is the rule, this is the universal law that I should follow in my life. Not that, I should get more information about the historical narrations. Most of them are coming from some sources that is not from Quran anyway. So don't get me wrong, I'm not denying the historical aspect of things. They probably, like, that's what I believe happened to do. Oh.
I lost you. Yeah, I don't hear you anymore, Brother Bacon. Brother Yusuf, go ahead in the meantime.
Since author in here is giving reference to the 20th word, I just want to read the question from 20th word because it makes it more explicit why he is making those points. And in 20th word, he is explaining in detail what he means, what he is summarizing in that text within just 2 paragraphs, actually a single paragraph. So in 20th word, he starts with the verses, which is, and when we told the angels prostrate before Adam, they prostrated except Iblis. And then there's this other verse, God commands that you sacrifice a cow. And yet, and the third verse is, and yet after all this, your hearts hardened and became like rocks or even harder. So one day while reading these verses, 3 points were important to me from the effulgence of the Quran against the promptings of Satan. His suggestions, Satan's suggestions, took this form. He said, you say the Quran is a miracle and of infinite eloquence, and that it's guidance for everyone at all times. So what is the meaning of its persistently repeating in historical form certain minor events like the following? How is it appropriate to mention an insignificant event like the slaughtering of a cow as though it were something significant? And even naming that surah, that important surah, the cow. Also, the event of prostrating before Adam, it occurred in the realm of the unseen and cannot be understood rationally. It may be submitted to and accepted with certainty only after a strong belief has been attained. Whereas the Quran instructs those who use their reasons. In many places it says, so will you not think, and refers what it says to the reason. So since apparently now this is contradicting reason or cannot be understood rationally, why is it asking me to believe in such a thing like prostrating before Adam, right? And the third question is also, how is it guidance to show certain natural conditions of rocks to be important, which are the results of chance? Like the verse says, and yet after all this, your hearts hardened and became like rocks or even harder. So what sort of a guidance is here? Is the Satan is asking in here, or like those questions are being asked? And I guess in general, of course, in the following pages and paragraphs, the author gives a more detailed explanation in here. But if we think about it, or if we listen to some people, actually it's quite frequent to read Quran as if it's simply talking about some stories or history. And then those questions becomes very relevant, as if saying that like this Quran doesn't make sense really, especially if you are taking Quran primarily as a literal text. Then those questions becomes very relevant. Why are you talking about slaughtering of an animal? I mean, I don't care about slaughtering of an animal. Well, not so much so that I'm expecting it to see in a book of guidance, because if it's a speech of God, every single word, even every single letter must be of highest importance. So there is that importance with the slaughtering of a cow. This is why the author is saying that implicitly in those lines, in the text that we were reading, now going back to the 25th word, what he is saying is Quran is explaining very detailed explanations or long concepts through giving those examples. So this is why I should be reading Quran from that perspective rather than getting stuck in literally what those words are meaning, or as in the comments people said, like there's no cow in my life, or really I'm not a cow worshiper. But these are spoken in this way, some very simple examples. And as you were initially saying, there is mercy in those heavy concepts being explained by those simple examples, to my understanding, because I don't need to be like a PhD or anything to understand those concepts. Otherwise, if you were to be teaching those concepts in, I don't know, in a grad level course or a college level course, yeah, sure, like you have 1 hour, 2 hours, or maybe a course to explain it to the students, and they are supposed to do assignments and midterms and finals and everything. But it's hard work. How are you going to convey the same message to everyone? And it shouldn't be that much hard for the average person. If anybody wants to dig deeper, yeah, sure, go ahead. But it needs to be explainable to common people as well. And everybody is a common people at the very beginning, unless they want to dig deeper. So this is why it is merciful to explain those concepts in such very simple terms by putting them into those exemplary and picturesque examples, so that I can extrapolate it, I can extract further meanings. And then, as you were saying, look for the cow in my life. And what does it mean that everything or angels prostrates to me, but Satan does not prostrate to me as a human? And what does this signify? And this information from the scripture, how can I confirm it in the existence? Plus, how am I going to make use of that information? So it starts me thinking about these by giving those very simple examples. And I guess overall, by these comments, author is suggesting me not to be a literalist. But to take this as an educational tool of Quran, this style of Quran is an education purposefully done in like that, so that I can understand it over a simple example, but then extrapolate it. But if I'm a literalist, I'm going to get stuck with that simple example and even not take it as an example, but try to say, oh yeah, for example, in the case of Adam, angels prostrating Adam, Satan not prostrating. So I will then start making like drawing a picture of, yeah, in that unseen realm, all the angels, and they were huge in numbers, and they immediately go to the prostration, but Iblis didn't. I will just start making up a story with utmost detail to you, so that you will try to imagine it in your mind. But when I say, well, how about what does it tell to me here and now? I wouldn't have an answer. And actually, recently I was in an environment in which somebody was asking about the questions pertaining to jinns and the spirits and whatnot. And another part of Nursi's writings were being discussed, which is 15th word. And in there, I feel like the same thing is happening. The author is talking about, by using a metaphorical language, talking about the stoning, like shooting stars, as Satan's being stoned. But some of the listeners in the environment was just reading literally. And what ends up happening is we start describing the scene as just somebody said this, another one says, oh yeah, they said that. And then it becomes like pretty much like a fairy tale. And it doesn't teach me much. And eventually one person asked, well, how about in the heaven, when I go to heaven, are there going to be jinns? Am I going to be friends with them? Or these sort of questions start coming up. Then like you ask the question, what am I going to do with that knowledge? I mean, I went to the paradise, everything is good up to that point, and then my neighbor being a jinn, now I am being concerned about it or not. So even that answer doesn't, I mean, let God take me to the paradise, and then I'm going to worry about who is going to be my neighbor in there. But these sort of unnecessary conversations would start taking place, or some others would mock and say that, look, as the question in here is highlighting, they would say, come on, Quran is suggesting us to use our intellect and see what sort of stories you are coming up with. It has nothing to do with rationally understanding it, or it's contradicting my perception and experience. Like, it's funny. Then they would deny on the basis of this. So this is why in here, author is, I think, showing us ways to reading into those stories to make more sense about the existence around us.
Yeah, thank you. Brother Bikan, you kind of got cut off. If you'd like to continue. If not, we can continue.
I don't know where it stopped because my battery was dead. But Yusuf already touched upon, some parts that I would mention. Maybe one just addition. This is also a kind of clarification about what I said before as well, and also maybe an possible clarification for what Yusuf said. So when we start using terms like literal or metaphors, or when we say things like, we shouldn't be worried about the historical background, we should look at the meaning, universal law. This is true. Like, this is true as it concerns us. But at the same time, there is always one-to-one matching between what is narrated in Quran and what we experience in our life. And that's the reason the author also defining Quran as the interpretation of our life, right? Interpretation of the speech of the universe, or speech of the creator as manifested as universe. But anyway, so this one-to-one matching, it also somehow go beyond, make things a little bit more sophisticated than these primitive terms that we always use. Like, we should look at it from a metaphorical, we should look at it as a metaphor, or we shouldn't be, the literal, or we shouldn't be concerned about historical backgrounds. These are like the primitive ideas that simple people like ourselves have. But when it comes to Quran and how it matches the reality, then yes, Quran is talking about some concepts, but they are manifested as practical things in our lives. Hence the example of the authors talking about snakes, right? When we read Quran, yes, when we talk about the Satan or something is not prostrating to human beings, we take it as a metaphor. We say, okay, yes, it's talking about some, the certain ways of living your life, or certain mindset, or certain suggestions, certain ideologies, right? Which are not prostrating to us, which are not, helping us to learn our, to uh, get closer to get closer with our creator. That's true. But at the same time, one manifestation of this fact, which is narrated in Quran, is that in my life, in my practical life, there are certain things uh, that seem like being enemy to me, or at least not enemy to me. Maybe sometimes they seem to be hostile to me, or at least not, if not hostile, they are certainly not prostrating, right, to me. Things like, for author, it's probably a personal choice, the snake. For some other people uh, who would find snakes lovely and maybe friendly, they would pet them, it would be something else. Right? But it's like there is unchanging rule in our lives that there are certain things which are not prostrating to us. In our life, we face things that we don't know how to handle, or we don't know what is the point, like what is the wisdom in it to be created, how it helps me in my journey. We cannot see from time to time, or we look at them and we see that the wisdom is denying them, is to see that they are not the right choice. And this is how they help us. Anyway, these are all examples, but what I'm trying to say is that when we say we should read Quran metaphorically, it does not, at least to me, it does not, or it should not disregard the fact that there are some physical, tangible, and also very substantial, real, the things that I can touch, right? Such manifestations or such examples of these from time to time abstract narrations, abstract concepts. That's one thing. Another thing, it does not also disregard the fact that, these, if they are historical narrations, these historical narrations most probably, at least this is why I expect from my creator's speech, uh, they they most probably happened in some time, like in in past. Yes, the point is I'm not concerned about their details. Whether Moses, wearing yellow coat or something green, or maybe he was wearing a short, what kind of shoes he was wearing, or what kind of man he was, whether he was tall, short, dark skin, white skin, or all these events that happen to be in the valley of Canaan or somewhere else. I'm not concerned. But at the same time, I assume they happened, which gives another, gives more credit to what is narrated to there. So what I'm trying to say again, like when we try to describe things, especially when we try to describe them from an engineering mind or from a scientific mindset that we all been, or at least most of us here, are being educated for or taught, that the things becomes simpler than they should be, or they becomes more isolated than they should be, like metaphorical versus literal. Life is not that simple. Life is not that primitive. We shouldn't forget that. When we talk about the metaphors, it's like we're just saying that when you read Quran, try to see how it fits to your life. Don't take it as just a story is being narrated there. It's not about me, but I will get some lessons. This is not the point. They are not narrated for you to get some lessons. They are about you. They are about you. But at the same time, when somebody else is reading it, it is about them as well. And when somebody else read them before me, it was about them as well. So there is also this historical aspect, historical dimension as well. But again, my point or author's point should be, the author points here is that my concern should be that how it fits to my life, both practically and both, in an abstract, metaphorical way. Jazakallah.
Well, thank you very much for those comments. Yeah, definitely. When I realized that if I just approaching the Quran metaphorically or even for lessons, it does seem in some sense to isolate it from my life in a bit. But when I take it that it's very real and it's very like real in a very real way, it's explaining to me the life that I'm experiencing at the moment. It's a completely different view, and the benefit you get it also completely different. There's just even I just wanted to repeat that point about how just taking lessons from Quran, it doesn't sound like a bad thing. It actually is like a good thing. You want to take lessons from the Quran. However, we want to. It's not just lessons. You want to read your life within the Quran and find the guidance directly that your Creator is telling you how you should live. So it's lessons about your own life, not about someone else's life, because that in these verses it talks about slaughtering the cow, or it talks about the angels prostrating, or Satan this. These are definitely events that I could find that I experience within my life that I need to be able to read in some sense. And as you said, the events we don't understand is generally that and we don't like in our lives is generally because we're not able to read them. And maybe by reading the Quran, it will help me understand how I could read those events that I don't like, that are very real to me and that are, let's say, plaguing me at the moment, but I need like a way to understand them, so Quran can be like a guidance in that sense. I see we have a comment. Whether Satan is a real thing or not, its effect is clearly observed in universe, just like whether you believe you are real or not, you observe the effects of you existing. Would you like to elaborate on that comment? It's hard for me to understand where you're coming from, or to make a comment about that. Yeah, if not, I mean, so the way I understand Satan, just to make a brief comment, but please go ahead if you'd like, is Satan, like the Quran explains it, talks about it, and it is a being in the Quran. And you have yeah, Brother Yusuf, you can go ahead.
So what I understand from Nazmul's comment is generally when we talk about Satan being real or not, jinn being real or not, we get caught with the picture that is being drawn, like what it looks like. Is it? We tend to feel as if it is something tangible, and since there are a lot of stories that we have been hearing since our childhood, and in childhood, of course, like even maybe most probably we believe that what's it called, unicorns exist. So always the picture side of things were what was making it real for us. So now that we are grown up and now that we are questioning the existence of unicorns with those horns and things, same thing applies to Satan. Now we say that does really Satan exist or not? So Nazmul in here, I think, is saying that getting caught with this what Satan looks like sort of a thing, like its tangible material existence sort of a thing, says if you are really unsure whether such a thing exists or not, just look at its effects in your life. So there are those questions that you don't know where they are coming from, that you dislike, despite your will, you are having those thoughts or just urges, desires. So this is how Quran is describing as Satan. So the source of all these things are called Satan in Quran's words. So practically such a thing must exist because its outcomes are in you. And this is what Quran is describing as Satan. But if you want to again get literal and say, well, I am imagining such and such of a thing with two horns and whatever has this tool in his hand, and then say, well, such a thing doesn't exist. I mean, a thing that I cannot observe in that physical form, I deny its existence. So definitely this doesn't make any sense, but rather, since the outcome is something that's observable, I don't know what it looks like in terms of its tangible existence, but I do confirm that I am being under effect of such suggestions. And Quran names it as Satan. I say, well, let's name it as Satan. But I am 100% sure that such a thing exists. So getting caught with its shape or form is just making me lose the real point.
Yeah, thank you for that comment. It's whether I think it's in this vein of everything we've been mentioning so far. Whether or not Musa alayhi salam was wearing black sandals or white sandals, or whether or not Satan is this being with two horns and a tail or something like that. It's almost, I mean, it isn't relevant to the life that I'm currently experiencing. And if I read what I do experience, what I do see exists, which is the fact that I have emotions, and sometimes, let's say, I have emotions I would rather not follow, or I have emotions that lead me to like over a cliff, like just how like Satan led Hazrat Adam to a tree. I have emotions that lead me to like wanting to hug, let's say, success, or my own tree in life, which could be living for the world in any sense. And the thing that's pushing me there, those desires, I experience that, Quran is describing these as Satan. and that's what I experience. And whether or not it's this being in the background or something, it's not relevant because I don't experience that. I need to read the Quran based on what I experience. I need to read the world based on what I see. Is this a new hand, Brother Yusuf, or?
Yes. So as Brother Birkan was saying, so if I get caught with the description as it is and look for the same shape and form in my life, then I'm going to miss the point, because I will not find the same shape and or form in my life. Then either I would deny the existence of such a thing, or I would say, well, it must exist because Quran says so, but it becomes irrelevant to me because I don't know how am I going to make sense of it. An example to that is there are a lot of narrations in like prophetic narrations who talks about, let's say, Dajjal, like those antichrist, I guess, in Christian terminology, that will come to defy the revelation. So there are a lot of figurative speech in there. If I take it literally, I would never find such a man on earth. And then the whole point of that narration gets lost, because it was in there to keep me awake or be vigilant of such a threat. But if I take it literally and search for a man with those description, then either I'm going to say, well, it doesn't make any sense, and then deny the prophetic tradition, or I would say, well, it must be true since Prophet said so, but I don't know how to make sense of it, and stop benefiting from it. Rather, what I should do is, how can I make sense of that? And definitely this is telling me about a reality that I can experience. So let me see where it fits in my life. So in case of Satan again, so where does this description fit in my life? What is my creator warning me against? So I need to check this aspect of it. And of course, fitting it in the description of Revelation, this perfectly makes sense, because the purpose of Revelation is to guide me. And as I am having troubles with all those suggestions, where I don't know where they are coming from, and I am troubled with my desires, I mean, let it be from overeating to overconsumption of anything, just following my desires, I might feel like, oh, this is, I have double personality. What's going on with me? I feel like I don't like it, yet there are those things, again, flourishing as if within from me. What's happening with me? I can become upset about myself. I can say that there's no way I'm going to become a nice person as I'm willing to see what sort of ugly thoughts, ideas are just happening within my heart. So I will start despising myself. But as Quran comes and explains that, no, this is Satan making it external to me, saying that I created a creation called Satan, so that in your education, it's going to play a part. It's going to suggest you those things, and it will have no effect on you, in fact. But if you take it so serious and think it is from you rather than from Satan, and accept it as yours, then it will start harming you. So Quran is describing how to cope with those mechanisms. And if I don't listen to Quran in this regard, and just take it as this, as you were describing this imagery, then I would need to go to a psychiatrist for solving my problem. And then he will say, oh yeah, there's this double personality and whatnot. Then he will try to identify the problem in my maybe neurons or brain and give me some medicine. But why did I fall into that trap? Because I didn't take Quran as guidance. So this is why I guess, again, I might have repeated a lot, but this is the point that I am expected to get from those story-like depiction of Quran, apply it to my reality and in my tangible reality where it fits.
Yeah, thank you. I don't think it was a repetition. I think each reminder adds more to understanding it. Even the last word you said, tangible, something I could experience or touch or feel or see, experience in my life. It's the Quran. It's speaking about the tangible things in my life, not the abstract or all of them together. Let's say it like that. What I can experience. Thank you for all your comments. Inshallah, we can, I guess, continue with the next sentence. And through water gushing forth from the rock and springs flowing out and spreading, they also state that the rock layer, which is under the soil layer, acts as a source of both water, springs, and the soil. So this is talking about the staff of Moses, which Nursi has actually named the book about, Asai Musa. And I believe he's talking about how the water gushes forth from those rocks that he struck with the staff. And then here he's kind of, the first comprehensive meaning to be gotten from this is that I can see that the Quran is speaking about how with under rocks there is water, or like water, there's groundwater that can spring out from the ground. So in, like, let's say the first layer, the most immediate layer, that I can see that the Quran is alluding to this comprehensive meaning. But of course, as we're talking about in this past 1 hour, it's that this comprehensive meaning goes much further than that. This imagery or this experience of Moses striking rock with his staff, in my life, it can mean many things as well. It can mean that there is an event that I don't like, which is like a rock in my life. It's a very hard rock. But if I can strike it with the staff, maybe the staff represents meaning. Maybe the staff represents the guidance of the Prophet, or from guidance from the Quran. If I can strike a rock, like trying to be conscious of my Creator, then that rock might gush forth with water. Like water might gush forth out of it. And water is something that sustains me, something that I enjoy. It's pleasant. So something hard and tough can turn to something pleasant if you can strike it with a staff. Very, very meaningful, actually like imagery and experience that you can apply into your life for the many tough things in your own life. I'll continue with the second example, but I'll take a moment to wait if anyone has any comments to make.
I think, thank you, Brother Yusuf, what you had said about how life can be seen in the context of these parables of our prophets. I noticed that something that just now when you had read about that, this line that when we leave something to Allah Ta'ala, it is going to make us possibly doubt our own ability to see it or look at it from a perspective of okay, I can overcome it, or I can take a hold of myself and recognize that I can deal with facing this obstacle or facing this idol in my life. But what we forget sometimes is that the fact that Moses came back and he listened to Allah Ta'ala, it tells me that we have the ability also to go back and return back. And hence, that's why in the parables of the Ambiya, we have this understanding that there is a light at the end of the tunnel. So if you are going into the depths of your own soul and recognizing the ugly with the good, the fear and hope is both sides of the coin when it comes to our ability to have good, pure faith. The other thing is that if I do get overwhelmed by what I do and choose, which may not be in line with Tawheed and having trust in Allah Ta'ala, then that's why instead of getting into the suggestive powers of shaitan and have more despair and more disbelief and more transgression and more insolency, ungratefulness towards our Creator, I'm supposed to take the time to go into khilwa and to have tasawwuf and to be able to have muraqabah. And those tools, as I can say, in our traditions, alhamdulillah, are able. You can notice that all of these Anbiya have been shown to retreat and go into reflection and contemplation, either when they were praying for their people to listen to their message, or when they were really overwhelmed and they had to hide for their own personal safety and survival. And even then, Allah Ta'ala comes in and tells them, fear not, or Angel Jibreel tells them and tell them that you have powers, the Malaika helping you in some ghazba. And our own conscious, subhanallah, tells us, you can handle it. If the moment we decide to turn to Allah, then whether it is the snake or the staff or pharaoh or the calf or other people who might be munafiq or mushrik, none of that reality will make any difference. What will make difference is that how I hold on to that one source, which is going to keep me on the straight path. And alhamdulillah, inshallah, I will know that the order of the universe, the fact that these are ayah and signs and training grounds for me to test my faith and its purity, it's not gonna be that the clarity of purpose for that particular mission is not gonna be becoming a second priority for me anymore. Jazakallah khair.
Jazakallah khair. Thank you for your comment. Inshallah, we can continue with the second example then. Second example, this is the whole and the parts of the story of Moses, peace be upon him, which is frequently repeated in the Quran, and each of the repetitions of which is shown as a tip of a universal rule, with each repetition stating the rule in question. So each repetition is shown as a tip of a universal rule. So each repetition talks about a universal rule that we can understand, and each repetition is stating the rule in question. So yeah, each repetition is about the rule. For example, O Haman, build me a lofty palace. And let's also look at the translation. So verse 36, Pharaoh ordered, O Haman, build me a high tower so that I may reach the pathways leading up to the heavens and look for the God of Moses, although I am sure he is a liar. And so Pharaoh's evil deeds were made so appealing to him that he was hindered from the right way, but the plotting of Pharaoh was only in vain. And also let's read the Arabic as well. وقال فرعون يا هامان ابني لي صرحا لعلي أبلغ الأسباب أسباب السماوات فأطلع إلى إله موسى وإني لأظنه كاذبا وكذلك زين لفرعون سوء عمله وصد عن السبيل وما كيد فرعون إلا في تباب. Okay, let's read what Nursi has to say about this. O Haman, build me a lofty palace. Pharaoh is commanding his minister, build me a high tower so that I can take a look at the heavens and observe them. I wonder if there is a God who governs in the skies like Moses claims, who can be seen from their disposition. So he wants to build a tower and go up to the skies and sees that if he can see God up there. Thus, through the word palace and this minor incident, it states a strange rule dominant in the traditions of the Egyptian pharaohs, who, because they lived in the desert with no mountains, wanted mountains. And because they did not recognize the Creator, were worshippers of nature and claimed godhood. And worshipping fame through displaying the works of their dominion perpetuated their name and constructed the famous mountain-like pyramids, and agreed to magic and metempsychosis and had their corpses mummified and preserved in their mountain-like tombs. Very interesting. So again, we're story of Moses about the Pharaoh who is commanding his minister, build me a palace, a tower, so that he can look at the heavens and observe it and see if he can find a God who governs in the skies like Moses claims. I mean, it's, you know, when we approach it from Stir, we're just like, oh, what a ridiculous guy. You know, what are you trying to do? Why are you trying to build a tower to go look for God? You know, this is how, if we externalize the story, we can think that Pharaoh is being ridiculous here. And like the Nursi's first explanation of this, it's interesting. It's you know, the pharaohs lived in a desert with no mountains, but they wanted mountains. They wanted these big towers, I guess. And then because they did not recognize a creator, I found this part interesting, were worshippers of nature and claimed godhood. So they were worshippers of nature, but they still claimed godhood. It seems a contradiction, right? Because if you're God, if you're an absolute being, you're not a worshipper of anything. But they were worshippers of nature. You know, they had to live and abide by the rules that were given to them. You know, they worshipped, let's say, the heights. You know, he wanted to climb high into the sky, and then that's where he thought he'd see God. That was a nature. That's like you're worshiping, let's say, the skies, because you think the skies are like the highest point, the physical things, and then worshiping fame. So they're claiming Godhead, but again, now they're worshiping nature, and they're also worshiping fame, and through displaying the works of their dominion, perpetuated their name and constructed famous mountain-like pyramids, and they even had their corpses mummified. So on one sense, they're trying to claim Godhead, they're trying to be immortal by trying to become like mummies, but it's like in trying to claim their immortality, it's so obvious how ridiculous or how unable they are, because they're just worshippers of, let's say, fame. You're trying to be immortal, you're trying to mummify yourself, you're trying to build these big pyramids, but really you're just worshiping fame. You're a slave of fame. Even like the people's fame, like the people below you, their fame is what you're a slave to, or even the people in the future. So it's just like this huge contradiction, or there's like this huge gap between what you're aiming to do by trying to be immortal or trying to be this God, let's say, but in reality, you're just like a worshiper of, you know, you're a lowly worshiper. You're worshiping like fame or something that can't even give you any benefit, or you're worshiping nature, which, again, you know, it cannot help you. Yeah, I thought it was a very interesting section. So I see Brother Yusuf has his hands up. Go ahead, please.
It's really interesting that the same pattern is happening in this day and age. Just to first talk about it externally, I guess we can find it in our personal lives too. But like nowadays, there had been this space race, for example, and still we are attempting to go to Moon and Mars. And interestingly, when the first man was in the space, he was a Russian cosmonaut, and the communist Russia made it as an occasion to prove its point, saying that our cosmonaut didn't see God, so he wandered around the world's orbit, yet he didn't see God in the space. So Similar idea. Nowadays, all those scientific findings are being utilized just to make the point that no, there is no God. It's science. We believe in science. Even Muslims are using that word. They believe in science, right? So the point is, as the author in here was saying, they were worshiping nature, because worshiping nature means things have qualities by themselves. I have qualities by myself, and a vaccine has a quality by itself. A fruit has a quality by itself. Everything acts on itself. This mindset. So, and in order for me to be a pharaoh, in order for me to claim that I have strength by myself, I have to prove that everything, or accept or highlight that everything has an existence and a power in itself. So this idea of nature worshipping is coming from me claiming to be strong and have power within myself. Inevitably, I have to claim the same for the rest of the existence. And this is what ends up happening. Today's all funding is going to natural sciences, and even the name is as such, it's natural sciences, in which we are trying to build, again, like huge towers to observe what is in the skies, and even we build those like particle colliders and whatnot to explore the nature of the thing itself. And what is the purpose of that pursuit? Is it to get to know the creator better? Or we are trying to understand the nature of the things themselves. So since our starting point is nature exists and things have a nature of itself, we are pretty much trying to do what Pharaoh was trying to do there, build up that large tower so that I can see. And of course, this is a sarcastic statement. I can see whether the God that Moses claimed is really existing. So this sort of a thing is still at play today in the what's happening outside. But then we can also turn it internal, where I am having a similar attitude of this building up some towers and claiming, as Pharaoh said, let me see if that God exists. And I guess in there, I need to check with myself to see to what extent really I am feeling like I own things. I am strong. I am independent within myself. And how this understanding of mine is leading me to explore further realms, just to prove to myself the point that God is not out there, like he's not in here governing in me, he's not governing anything out there. But again, I am pushing it beyond myself. I am trying to explore outside, escaping from myself and how creator is acting on me and governing me. Since I am denying this categorically from the beginning, I just go outside and put my finger to other things. We can also in this sense maybe take it as social media. I am escaping from myself, escaping from contemplating on myself, and busy myself with things in the outside, and try to say that, yeah, you see, everything is in chaos. There's no order, no creator, no nothing. So likewise, I am an independent being by myself. So I guess the same pattern is all over the place, but it was given us in the example of Pharaoh asking his chief officer to do this towers, and practically it's visible, tangible, as Brother Bekan was highlighting. Today in the Egypt, you go and you see that those buildings are there, but if you look at it in today's world, the same pattern is in there, and also in my personal life, the same pattern is in there. So Quran is, by giving the specific example, highlighting such an important pattern that exists all over the place, regardless of time and place.
Yeah, thank you for your comment. I really like this verse, this example of Pharaoh saying he wants to build a lofty tower, because I see it so clearly in our current day. It's very clear because, as you said, you know, I think in some sense, like we see, like, you know, becoming or escaping Earth and becoming like a multi-planetary civilization or something, or being able to explore space. We see like, oh, we're escaping the shackles of Earth. We're escaping what was given to us, and we're conquering that. We're defying everything. And also, there's almost this idea that, you know, God doesn't exist, space exists. So like space is the answer, the universe is the answer. Like that's where we're gonna find. So it's like, uh, um, you know, I read things like this from like like the books. The people, they truly love the universe. They love the cosmos, and they see the harmony in it. But and they want to, in some sense, going into the cosmos, how beautiful it is, it like and like being able to explore it, being able to conquer it, like being able to conquer space. You know, they see it as like conquering it, like an accomplishment. Like human civilizations are growing and like kind of like beating evolution, let's say. It's like defying God. They see it as like a step of defying, you know, entering space. And it's the same thing. It's exactly the same as trying to build a tower to get into, let's say, very high and see if God is there. Like you're maybe like metaphorically, I don't like, maybe you're actually looking for God, but I think it means more like you're trying to defy God. Like, let me do this and let me try see if God can stop me. You know, I'm so powerful that I can build this huge skyscraper, or I can get into space, and God can't do anything about that. Like there's like, I can trust my own power type of thing. That's how I understand it. And definitely in our own lives, I'm sure there's like, you know, to find God, we might build our own towers, or we might like, okay, let me build my tower like this. Like, let's say, to be a servant, I need to be super rich, or and then give all my money away. And like, this is like, you know, I'm like, okay, God is coming at the end of when I'm super rich, type of thing, potentially. That might be one idea of how you have your own tower in your own life. Another, so please make your comments. I think this paragraph you can make many comments about, but until someone raises their hand, I'll just keep talking. Another thing I wanted to focus on was this nature worshiping. There were worshippers of nature, and I just thought it was also interesting that, you know, when we do build skyscrapers, or when we do build spaceships, you know, just like these are the most extreme examples, like the whole time you are following the decrees of like the laws of nature. Let's say you're, you know, you're following the rules of physics, you know, the rules of chemistry, and you must study them and you must follow them. You know, you're not conquering them. They've already been given to you, and you're just kind of learning about them and placing them in different ways. And you know, you're using that to get up into space, or to like to climb this tower. So it's odd that you think that you can somehow escape the creation by following the creation, you know, because you have to be very careful of you know, following the order of this creation. But it's almost like funny to be like, I will follow the order of the creation to become a god, or like to be able to be escape it, or to defy it. It's contradictory. You can't. We are created, and we are created in an order that you cannot escape. So you cannot claim godhood.
Another thing that I notice is that in my field in mental health, we often have mindfulness, right? So in mindfulness, Isinur, you probably can attest to that also, being in a doctoral program. I think that a lot of the mindfulness research or spiritual psychology research that we see, it's built around Buddhism, it's built around nature connectedness, it is built around Wilder and self-compassion and retreat. Some of the elements make sense to me when it is about solitude and reflecting upon yourself to improve yourself as a person. But if the aspects of humility and gratitude towards Allah and taking it as a life lesson and applying abudiyat into one's life and psychology is not there, then exactly what you're saying is true, that the nature becomes a path for praising oneself, that I can use it as a commodity. I can use it something that I can control, or I can exploit, or I can find myself recreating in it. But it's not necessarily something that can reorient me back to the creator who created it. And in mindfulness research, I noticed this a lot of the times whenever I have tried in my circles of colleagues and even clients to build up the issues around a person's sense of, let's say, I want you to pay attention to the spiritual aspect of your well-being as well. People will get very irritated because they will think that, oh, now you're going to go on talking about religion and we don't want anything to do with God. Now, Spilla. The other aspect that I can quickly talk about is this, that even within nature connectedness, ecological perspective is good, that, okay, we want to do good and be grateful for the earth and not destroy it. But it doesn't seem like that it is for the non-Muslims or atheist community or a religious community, that the concept is that because it was ordered or commanded or admonished by Allah Ta'ala to be, even though it is in other Abrahamic religions, be the shepherds of the earth. Christians have, be the shepherds of the earth. The earth is entrusted to us. Jews have their own understanding of tikkun olam, which means fix the broken world. So even now with Palestine and Kashmir, and well, Kashmir is a separate, of course, another issue. But with Palestine, I wonder, you keep on puppeteering about fix the broken world, but you are breaking it and destroying it for others. How come? Because the God consciousness is missing. And in that sense, overpowering or expanding on laterally in earth or vertically into the space goes back to the, I guess, a lesson of Ibra, that we are trying, as generally as humanity I'm speaking, trying to find God in the very places that he created for us as confinements. The space in the universe itself is a confinement, because Allah Ta'ala says in another surah that when anybody tries to come closer to the arsh or rises up into the sky and their intention is to spy or their intention is to hear what I guess Hukum Allah Ta'ala is giving to the angels, that we are going to throw lit stars on them and they won't be able to reach. It's in Surah Yasin that jinn and insan cannot go out of the confines of the earth and the skies until Allah Ta'ala wills. And that's why in Surah Rahman, Allah Ta'ala says that your gaze will become humble and you will go back down onto the earth, recognizing that you cannot reach up into the heavens until I will. And we don't know exactly how, and that's indeed is unseen and that belongs to him. And anybody who is trying to find their own, God forbid, godliness in their pursuits of, like Brother Abdul Rahman, you said that the physical existence and the space-time that Allah Ta'ala has given us, they're going to fail badly, because anybody, I too, if I were to go look for it, despite all my hope and prayers that I want to be God conscious, but in the moment that takabbur comes in my head and in my heart, that I need to find something on my own, because my goodwill provides me, free will provides me the ability to go out and explore something, so that I can say I have achieved it, or I have conquered it, or I have gained some other benefit from feeling that I can find it. Then I think it's a danger of giving up our ubudiyat and falling in the traps of becoming um, or trying to become as absolutely powerful as Allah Ta'ala himself is. So very important guiding points here in Imam Nur Sedi's writing. Jazakallah khair.
Jazakallah khairan. Thank you for those interesting connections between the different verses. You're building a tower to, let's say, reach God or try to reach God, and then there's a verse about how rocks will be thrown down at them. Like when the Satans or the jinns try to listen to meanings. Like maybe let's say you can even, it made me think like the satanic approach to trying to read meaning won't get you anywhere, or a satanic approach won't get you anywhere. Only rocks will be thrown down. So just as you're building a tower in a, let's say a satanic way to see God, it'll only lead to your ruin, because like rocks will be thrown down. Like there will be no meaning to satisfy you there. I think it's also, I'm thankful. I think we're coming to the end of this discussion. I can say that I'm thankful that, let's say, Pharaoh existed, or like Pharaoh is mentioned in the Quran, because I see a person who almost personifies, or this is like the things he's doing are the things I find that we are doing in today. Like very clearly we're doing it today as a, let's say, as a people, as humans, but also in our individual lives. We could also read that, but it's very clear to me, at least in terms of like the bigger picture, that in this day and age we're doing the exact same things. We're also building pyramids, we're also building towers, we're also trying to be immortal in some sense. And this Pharaoh, he's given as like a teacher, I guess, in the Quran, showing us how not to be. And he's very clearly stating, because when you read an external person doing this, you find it ridiculous. So similarly in our lives, when we can also read this experience, that God is, again, like we're not just trying to get a lesson from the Quran, as was mentioned earlier in the discussion, but this is actually just like an explanation of the current circumstances that I am living. And when I approach it in that sense, I can see that I am experiencing the Pharaoh. Maybe I am the Pharaoh, and I could read the Quran as guiding me in this sense, and it becomes very comprehensive when I read it this way, and it becomes very beneficial to read it. Alhamdulillah. Thank you all for attending the discussion. I benefited very much from it. I will take a quick pause on if someone has the last comment they'd like to make. If not, I will then end it.
Jazakallah khair.
Jazakallah khair. Inshallah, see you all next week. Subhanaka la ilma lana illa ma 'allamtana innaka antal alimul hakim. وآخر دعواهم أن الحمد لله رب العالمين. الفاتحة.